Hi, and welcome to Church of Aliens. In this episode, we're going to talk about something quite specific that was mentioned on the Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp interview on the Joe Rogan Experience a few weeks ago. So I hope you guys have listened to that one. It was quite a good one. They mentioned mostly um, the hearings that happened recently and also David Grush's testimony along with David Fravor. Um, but they did mention something that really caught my attention, which was George Knapp was mentioning that his contacts, the military personnel that are involved in this and have, you know, all the clearances and they're studying this phenomenon, I tell him that they the non-human intelligence and we can call them aliens are really harvesting human souls, and human beings are either perceived or being used as containers for the soul. And this is something that really caught my eye, and it was quite a cool idea to think about, and also a bit scary when you think about it. That, in a sense, that behind the physicality of a human being, what makes you have a inner spark or some spirit or soul that is really you. That's the reality that doesn't die, that doesn't diminish, and somehow lives on eternally, maybe. Um, and this is somehow sought after by the non human intelligence, whether they are here on Earth or some other dimension or galaxy. So I don't know if you guys heard that, but I want to talk about how it relates to Chris Bledsoe. Chris Bledsoe, if you haven't seen his Instagram, a few months ago, he posted some pictures of orbs, which he has almost daily. But these pictures were a close up of the orbs, and you can really see people's faces, whether they're real or not. They relate to this idea that these orbs or this technology is somehow taking souls, or they're transporting souls somehow. Now we don't know if they're really human souls or they're from another planet or dimension or time. But I mean, some of the posts that you saw, that you could see even dogs and cats, which is really weird. But that somehow relates to what George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell were mentioning. Even though Chris Bledsoe, he's even mentioned that he thinks that these orbs are somehow transporting souls and spirits. They're not, these machines or people using this technology and just traveling around, going for a little holiday somewhere in the US. It's something spiritual for him. They're angels. And somehow he believes that they're not just physical, that this is some spiritual experience that's happening, some spiritual reality here on Earth. Also, Tom DeLonge mentioned something along these lines. He did mention how, I can't remember the interview exactly where he mentioned this, but he did say that these beings are really interested in your emotions, and especially your negative emotions, and how if you are scared or have a negative emotion, it will make things even worse. For example, if you have a poltergeist experience, if you're scared of this, somehow the book might fly off the shelf. But if you're terrified and you're shooting yourself, the book will fly off and hit your face. Now, I don't know if these beings are using that energy that they want to influence you to have. They want you to feel scared to then draw that out of you somehow. It's a very bizarre idea to think about. Um, and also how George Knapp mentioned that their influence in wars and in religions. And if you think about it, like a war is just complete suffering and grief and one against the other. And similar in religion, you have the opposite emotions, like you have complete hope and love in a particular God, and you dislike other religions or other groups. They're either a danger or they're people that you need to change into your religion. So I don't know, it kind of seems very bizarre that these non-human intelligences would influence us to express these emotions, and somehow that is affecting our human soul, and these beings are interested and they're somehow harvesting our souls because of it. And I was reading one book online by Linda Moulton Howe, where it mentions this as the concept of human beings as containers for the soul in Glimpses of Reality, Volume 2, High Strangeness. And it's quite a detailed book, but in this book mentions the Ebens and how they're interested in trying to protect human beings and their soul from these horrible wars and things that would affect their soul, darkness and negative emotions. And somehow there you could even sort of picture that they're creating these abductions or experiences to really, in the same way, really harvesting, controlling human beings to where they want you to experience what they want. And I don't know where the freedom really comes into play with this, because if you're complete control and influence and manipulation from this other, what can you really do about it? There's not much you can do. And I tend to think, for example, Chris Bledsoe, his experience, you could say that he was suffering a lot with disease. I think he had Crohn's disease. He had problems with his family, with his business. And somehow this experience happens to him in the lake with his son, Chris Bledsoe Jr. And they're, in a sense, controlling and influencing what he would do, how his thought patterns, his emotions, his psychology would be. He matures quite quickly and changes his perspective on loads of things. I was reading his book a few weeks ago. It's very good on Audible. And he was mentioning that after this experience, he was obviously quite scared and terrified, but then he started thinking about the community. He was planting crops and vegetables and fruits and giving them out to people. And you can see how these beings were not just giving him experience. He didn't just happen to just be there and he saw these aliens doing something. They were interested in him and his progression as a human being, and to nurture and, in a way, control what he would be like. Now, you can take this in a quite a negative or positive way, but you're never really going to know really the answer until we get more information on it, more data in a sense. But you could take it as something negative where they're completely manipulating someone like Chris Bledsoe or anyone else, or doing something completely positive, like as if they're guardians tending to a garden. They're protecting us. They're trying to guide us for something better, something more focused on others and less on fear. But you could also take it the opposite. And I don't think anyone's really going to know exactly. Unless you start to believe that there are good aliens, bad aliens, but they're in a sense doing the same thing. They're creating some sort of experience that gets your attention, manipulates and controls what is happening in the environment within you, and then this event can be years, sort of molding and changing what you believe, how you live, um, how you treat others. There are people where they start being very religious and think this is God healing, or it's an angel, or um, it's somehow related to their religion. And then they others that completely say this is bizarre. It has nothing to do with God, and question everything that they've ever been brought up with. It can have all sorts of different effects on people. But yeah, I found this little snippet in the JRE podcast really interesting. Now I don't know. I was thinking how even Jack Valet in his book, I think it's called Dimensions. Is it Dimensions or Invisible College? I'm not sure. But he does mention examples of how this is going back to folklore, even in, for example, what was the fairy kingdom, and how fairies would lure humans into the fields, into the forests, and they would somehow be interested in what they would be feeling, and what how they would be when they would be returning home. It's not just you're just viewing, or you're just seeing um, some extraterrestrial or some fairy or some elf or something doing some task in a forest. They're interested, and their intention is to really change who you are, change what you can become. And the question for me is this something really beneficial for humankind? Do we even have a choice in this? Um, it's quite bizarre. But anyways, I hope this was an interesting topic for you guys. And if um, please leave a comment down below on your thoughts on human beings being perceived as containers for the soul. And see you next time.